Back to Isaiah 42. To open the blind eyes, to bring the prisoners out of the prison and they that sit in darkness out of the prison house. Isn't that our role of medical missionaries? We've seen so many prisoners freed from addictions. So many freed from the addiction of caffeine. So many freed from the addiction of refined sugar. There's so many areas. Oh yes, and all the drugs. I think I told you about the lady we had last week. Was it 3 bottles of alcohol wine a day for 5 years, and before that 1.5 bottles of brandy a day for 2 years. Yee. And God brought her to Manor House. Praise be to God. When I left, when did I leave? Day before yesterday, that lady was smiling. Oh, she's found gold. She's been freed. Her blindness has been cured. Where does the blindness come from? We find the blindness in 2 Corinthians 4, verse 3. But the God of this world has blinded the minds. Aha. It's a blind mind. You see that? Has blinded the minds of men who believe not, lest the light of the glorious gospel of Christ should shine upon them. Oh, we get back to that again. I read in Great Controversy where Ellen White says, barely is the enemy mentioned from the pulpit. So do you know what that makes me want to do? Bring it into every presentation. And I can bring it in with you because you are Bible-believing Christians. But when I am speaking to people who do not know God, I'm a little bit more cautious with how I bring that in. But remember what God's just promised. He's going to hold your hand. He's going to keep you. He's going to give you as a covenant of the people and a light of the Gentiles. Why? To open the blind eyes. That's the reason for the medical missionary work. Can you see that? That is the reason. And let's go to Isaiah 58. In Isaiah 58, God's love letter to mankind. Cry aloud, spare not, lift up thy voice like a trumpet. Show my people their transgression, the house of Jacob their sins. Does that mean we have to stand on the pulpit and say, you're drinking too much coffee, and you're eating too much, and you... No. Let's have a look at the voice that Daniel used. Let's have a look at the voice that Joseph used. What was their voice? It was their life. That was such a loud voice. I've recently read the story of Joseph. And after the dream interpretation, and the king said, we need a man to build houses. But he did not want Joseph for 2 reasons. He was a Hebrew and he was a slave. But he could not find a man. He tried everywhere. He could not find one. And then he started his own investigation. And he sent investigators into the prison. They questioned the prisoners. They questioned the jailers. They questioned the guards. I wouldn't be surprised if they also questioned Potiphar. And what did they find? No fault. No fault. And I wouldn't be surprised if the king had discovered that Potiphar knew that Joseph had not laid with his wife, because if he thought he had, he'd be dead. Yes. Isn't that true? Just imagine those years in that prison. Would you think Joseph had every reason to complain? He'd done nothing wrong. But what did he do? Do you know what Ellen White says in Patriarchs and Prophets? He drowned his sorrows by listening to the sorrows of others. How beautiful. He would go with the other prisoners. Tell me a story. He drowned his sorrows by listening to the sorrows of others. And I wouldn't be surprised if some of those prisoners are the ones that the king's men investigated. And what did the king eventually find? there was no one like Joseph. Even there. How did Joseph lift up his voice like a trumpet? How did he show the people their transgression and sin? By his life. By his life. What's the old saying? Preach the word, and sometimes use words. Yeah. And you know why the princes hated Daniel so much? He didn't drink, he didn't smoke. They could not fault him, and they hated him because his life was a constant testimony to their bad lives. So please, when you read that, don't think that you've got to go to the churches and stand there and start pointing the finger. It is your life. It is your life. And when the people ask you, then you can speak. And you've probably heard this word, this saying, a man convinced against his will be of the same opinion still. In other words, you can preach at them morning, noon and night, but if they're not open to it, what's it going to do? Ellen White says never scold because it never does any good. Scold is a word we don't use much now, so I put a modern day word in it. Never nag because it never does any good. Don't nag your teenagers. Don't nag your husband, ladies. And men don't usually nag, it's more women. Because it never does any good. What's your biggest testimony? It's your life. That's what it is. It's your life. One lady was working at our retreat and she said, well, I want to be able to eat when I want. Because some of the young girls found her in the back room eating between meals. She said, I want to be able to eat when I want. I said, you can eat when you want, but unfortunately you can't work here. When you work at the health retreat, you're in what they call, you're in a glass bowl, you're being watched. You're being watched by other staff. Please be a testimony to the other staff. You're being watched by the guests that come. You know what the Bible says, and it says this in Hebrews chapter 4. And I think it's around verse 14 or 15. I think it's 13. Neither is there any creature that is not manifest in his sight. All things are naked and opened before the eyes of with whom we have to do. God sees it all. You're not tricking anyone when you hide it from this person or that person. And you don't know whether you will be investigated like Joseph was. You don't know. You don't know. So that's when your voice will be the loudest. So after the tribunal where they questioned me for 2 hours, they had everything I'd ever said. They had everything. And I thought, what are they going to find? I don't use notes. Sometimes my words might not be absolutely accurate. I couldn't find anything. There was one, you see, their claim is that I claimed to cure cancer, which I have never claimed. And there was one where I demonstrated the sodium bicarbonate wraps, which is a wrap that we give to cancer patients to give their bodies the right condition for healing, which is all I've ever said. I was demonstrating and I just finished the wrap and the film clip came in that they chose. And someone said, can you use chemo as well as the sodium bicarbonate wraps? And I said, well, it's like cutting your hand and putting a Band-Aid on it and cutting again and putting a Band-Aid on it and cutting again and putting a Band-Aid on. And they turned it off. And I thought in my mind, is that all they've got? Is that all they've got? And the head of the Healthcare Complaints Commission said, why did you put that demonstration of the wrap up on YouTube? I said, I didn't. I said, I didn't even know it was there. In fact, I didn't. A guest said to me, we've been doing the wraps. I said, how do you know what to do? She said, they're up on YouTube. I said, are they? So he said, who filmed it? I said, I'm not sure that there was a film crew. Where were you? Or, under what thing? I said, well, a doctor had asked me to demonstrate it. Doctor who? What was his name? I felt like cornered then. I didn't want to give the doctor's name. And I looked at the lawyer. They're not allowed to speak to me. I said, I'm not going to tell you. And the lawyer said, call a break quickly. So we called a break. She said, by law, you have to give his name. And the Healthcare Complaints Commission was about to jump on me because he said, are you refusing to give the name? Oh, that's the only time I really felt cornered. So we had a break and she said, you have to tell. And I looked at my husband and he was not very happy that I'd said that. Marcus says I'm too innocent. They'll just catch me. Anyway, so we started up again and because they recorded everything, he said, what was the doctor's name? I said, Dr. Thomas. He said, Dr. Thomas who? I said, well, it's a long Indian name and I can't pronounce it and all his patients call him Dr. Thomas. He looked, he said, where does he work? I said, New Zealand. Well, it was just dropped like that. Because Australia has no jurisdiction over New Zealand. Because then they would have gone after that man. At the end of the tribunal, we talked to the lawyer and she said, I can't believe it, they've got nothing on you. And Michael said, will she get off? He said, no, she'll get a life ban, but she won't go to jail. If she was guilty, she'd go to jail. That's our justice system. Doesn't it make you want to fly and fear God? Give glory to him. For the hour of his judgment has come, and there will be a judgment day. And what does it say in Revelation 12? And I think it's about verse 11. It says, rejoice ye heavens and they that dwell therein. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, knowing that he hath but a short time. His days are numbered. So no wonder Jesus said in John 16, verse 33, these things have I spoken unto you, that in me you might have peace. In the world you shall have tribulation. Did you get that? In the world you shall have tribulation, but be of good cheer. He said, I've overcome the world. So don't be surprised when the tribulation comes, because it's going to come. One lady said, why are they doing this all to you? Why is God letting that happen? I said, haven't you read the life of Jesus? Yeah. Haven't you read Great Controversy? Have you seen the stand of the princes? Have you seen the ones that were burnt at the stake? We're not being burnt at the stake. What's the great want of the world? The want of men and women who will not be bought or sold.